Chicago. This is what is referred to in Chicago as the Magnificent Mile. It's where a lot of the expensive boutique shops are. You have a mile of that throughout Michigan Avenue here in Chicago. As you can see, there's a boarded up building behind me, and over here to my left, we have a retail space that is now open for lease. Now, it's the beginning of a new weekend in Chicago, Labor Day weekend. Chicago Police Superintendent David Brown dumped about 8,000 police officers on the streets to try to prevent gun violence and any further looting events. So we'll just go ahead and start taking a walk through the area that was looted a month ago and take a look at some of the buildings that are boarded up, and we'll talk about what's going on in Chicago. And to start off, first you'll see some of our outdoor dining, and there's people right here where this looting event took place, enjoying a wonderful dining atmosphere here in downtown Chicago. Yeah. So the city has this area blocked off with permits for these restaurants because of COVID-19 to kind of set up this outdoor seating environment for people to eat outdoors so they're not eating inside and possibly spreading coronavirus. But we'll go ahead and go up. You can see police blockades up here where these police are set up, and this is typical ever since, especially since the event a month ago with the looting taking place. There's a lot of police officers out here on the streets. Dozens of them are on street corners all the way down a mile. They call it the Magnificent Mile, all the way a mile to the bridges that cross the Chicago River. Now we're kind of getting up here with a little bit more of the retail stores that some people were driving their vehicles up into the storefronts and crashing the windows down so people could get inside and loot. People were using metal objects that are typically concreted into the sidewalk. They were pulling those out and smashing windows with those to get inside. And again, hundreds of people were involved in this looting event. So let's go ahead and we'll take a left up here. You can see Hermes. That's a very high-end brand. You've got Prada right here. The Dior store is just down the way. It's Now these Chicago police officers have been working 12-hour shifts. They've had all day suspended since the rioting and civil unrest began in late May. So even with the increased police presence last weekend, over 50 people were shot in Chicago over the Labor Day weekend, and at least 10 people were killed in gun violence. There was also an incident that rattled Chicago's Wicker Park neighborhood, where an 18-year-old man is now in custody, charged with first-degree murder after police say he entered a Walgreens there around 9:30 a.m. Sunday morning and stabbed a 32-year-old female employee several times.
and she was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, Labor Day weekend ended with a drive-by shooting Monday night, and that took the life of an 8-year-old girl and critically injured 3 others. And in the middle of this week, on the city's south side, a postal carrier was shot multiple times on her usual route, and she remains in critical condition. So let's go ahead and continue walking down this way and look at some of these boarded up stores. You can see this entire storefront base here is boarded up. A lot of these businesses are remaining open at this time, but they have all this protective boarding up to either hide broken windows or to protect the windows that still exist. Now, the type of violence that took place last week or over the Labor Day weekend in Chicago has become all too common in 2020. This year, the month of July alone saw 105 murders with 584 people shot, and that makes it the most violent month in Chicago in 28 years. In August, the numbers just came out for August, 63 murders took place in the city. 24 children under the age of 10 have been shot this year alone in Chicago. Several of those young children that were shot died from their wounds. So far this year, murders have nearly doubled from 2019, with 440 killings January through July. That's up from 232 last year during that same period. And we'll continue to walk through here. This is Dior. There's a lot of high-end hotels down here as well on the Magnificent Mile. This is where people come to spend some major money. As you look at some of these storefronts, you know, a lot of them have their windows replaced, but just a month ago, in the overnight hours of August 9th through August 10th, the early morning hours, all of these were smashed in and people were running in and out, carrying armloads of material, armloads of inventory. As you can see, as we continue to walk, we'll pan along the side of these windows so you can see, you know, almost at least every other store is still boarded up here in downtown Chicago. This is a month later. This is a month after the looting took place. And there are, you know, still police resources that are being utilized downtown. You know, there's been talk about calling in the National Guard. The mayor has kind of shut down that idea, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get onto Michigan Avenue. You know, and I keep bringing up shooting deaths and gun violence in Chicago. You know, that's one aspect to kind of what led to this looting, as well as the relationship between the Chicago Police Department and the community. And you know, right now the Chicago Police Department is working with a lot of the community, but then also there are incidents, and we'll talk about what led to the looting last month as we again as we get up here on Michigan Avenue. And over here to the right, you can see the Gucci store on the corner. Beautiful corner store. Last time I was here, I witnessed a couple of young ladies that were arguing with police officers. The windows were smashed in. There was a couple of purses left in the show front there. And, you know, these ladies were continuing to argue with the police, like, you know, they were saying things like, "Let me just grab that one purse." Louis Vuitton Just across the street here, you can see that's also still boarded up. Now here on Michigan Ave, you still do see a police presence. It's not as heavy as it was last weekend or the weekend before that or the weekend before that. So you might see a little bit of the police presence down here loosening up, as no other looting events have taken place since the one that happened a month ago. And if you look just ahead about half a block, you can see Water Tower Place. And that's key right now as we talk about some of the businesses here when it comes to lease renewal when that time comes. And then just over here, kitty corner, you can see the Hancock building. Now this building, for the price of a cup of coffee, you can go up to the 96th floor of the Signature Room, and you can get a really great view of the city. A lot of people pay, $50 or so to go on the sky deck in the Sears Tower, or Willis Tower, as it's officially named now. But for the price of a coffee, you can head up there and really get some great views of Chicago and the Signature Room. So as we're walking through kind of this dark spot, you can still see police on every corner. The lights are on, kind of alerting people of their presence, to let people know that they're watching for sure. But as we walk through kind of this darker area, we'll talk a little bit about the violence in Chicago. As in many of the shooting deaths here in Chicago, especially when young children are involved, community organizations have stepped up, offering rewards for information leading to arrests. In the case of this week's 8-year-old girl who was shot dead, the organization I'm Telling Don't Shoot is offering a $10,000 reward to track down suspects. The name of that organization is reflective of the increasing sense of neighbors coming together with law enforcement to provide details that may either prevent violent crime or bring violent criminals to justice. And the Chicago Police Department has also stepped up their game when it comes to building relationships with community members. It's very often now to see videos posted online of CPD officers dancing in the streets with children and shaking hands with neighbors and community leaders. And now, 1 month after an officer-involved shooting of a young black man in the city's Englewood neighborhood led to the reaction of members of the community to descend upon Chicago's chic Magnificent Mile in the overnight hours of August 9th to loot downtown's expensive boutique shops, many changes have come. You got dozens of police now dotting the downtown landscape at night. City dump trucks are on standby each night to shut down roads if another looting event were to occur. And for about a week after the looting, Mayor Lori Lightfoot ordered the bridges over the Chicago River that were leading into downtown to be raised at night with a curfew put into place. The looting event caused about $60 million in damage. It put some independently owned shops out of business, while other larger shops have expressed interest in moving out of the area. Some saying that at least renewal time, they will choose to go in another direction. And so as we get up here, it's very windy. They call it the Windy City. It's not because of the wind, but it just happens to be windy now as you guys are tuning in here for your eyes on Chicago. giant Toys R Us adventure store. And right now, what do you see inside of the signs that say retail space release? That's something that you see a lot in Chicago, and that doesn't necessarily have to do with looting. Speaking of that, we'll go ahead and head over to Water Tower Place, and that's where Macy's is. So one of the larger businesses that have been affected was Macy's, and that occupies about 8 floors of the Mag Miles Water Tower Place. Macy's, however, had already expressed back in February that they might not renew their lease. So if anything, looting just goes to further that blow. Now, Chicago police have released dozens of looting suspect pictures derived from August 10th surveillance footage on the Magnificent Mile, and many arrests have been made, with some of those shown on footage identified by members of the community. And as you can see, for now, many businesses have reopened, but they do remain boarded up to hide the broken windows or to protect existing windows. And that theme of boarded up windows is not just limited to downtown. The practice is widespread throughout the neighboring communities. Employees downtown say they're fearful of being downtown. Local residents also have expressed their concerns. Downtown Alderman Brian Hopkins says residents and businesses alike are on the verge of exodus. And as we get up a little bit further, this area of town, for weeks before the looting incident, Alderman Brendan Riley had been asking for an increased police presence as violent crime had already been escalating. Slow down, please. Members of car clubs and motorcycle clubs speed loudly up and down the streets. Curbside parties were said by Alderman Riley to bring hundreds of people out partying late into the early morning hours, with many of the bars closing before midnight due to the COVID-19 restrictions. This is the Ralph Lauren store. You can see one of the windows there boarded up. Now, over here is Neiman Marcus. This was also one of the bigger high-end stores that was hit. You can see boarded up windows there. Since the August 10th looting spree, a special city council meeting was called where several of the city's aldermen demanded that Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker call in the National Guard. The alderman had also asked the governor to declare a state of emergency because of the looting and violence. But Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, after that meeting, expressed concern over a National Guard presence, saying that the deployment is not the right crime-fighting tool for Chicago right now. And she went further to describe her childhood memory from 1970, being 7 years old and living in Ohio in close proximity to Kent State, where National Guardsmen there shot and killed 4 college students during a demonstration there, and 9 others were wounded. This is the world famous Tiffany. And further down in downtown Chicago on Wabash, right by the elevated train, the L train, there's a jeweler's row right there, and a lot of those are boarded up as those were hit during the looting. We've got Saks Fifth Avenue here. The looting in Chicago has been specifically attributed by community members as a reaction to excessive force used by the Chicago Police Department. And these events typically will follow an officer-involved shooting. And while there have been marches in the streets calling for the defunding of police, and many demand that CPD be removed from schools, there will be a budget hearing next week to decide the near future of police funding in the city of Chicago. And the police department budget for 2020 is nearly $1.8 billion. As I kind of round things up, community activists, especially those in the black community, admit that violent acts in Chicago are often black on black crimes, but they say there are approaches besides the policing of the community that could lead to a better future. These approaches include, but are not limited to, mental health programs in communities most often stricken with violence to help the young and old sort through the trauma of their violent experiences. And there's talk about youth mentoring programs as well. And something you see a lot within the black communities of Chicago is a large number of neighbors and organizations coming together to not only create positive events and environments, but to communicate with each other as neighbors and to create an environment of mentorship with the children in those neighborhoods. You'll often see, for example, Jamal Cole. He's the founder of My Block, My Hood, My City, dispersing grants in the community for positive events. And a man known in his neighborhood as the mayor of Inglewood, Charles McKenzie, working with many organizations to now almost weekly set up shop on a corner in Chicago's Inglewood neighborhood to give out thousands of toys to children and to feed thousands of families. These activists are consistently calling for an end to the violence.
All right, so that's just a little bit of a walkthrough a month later after the looting event here at the Magnificent Mile in Chicago, downtown Chicago. If you want to hear more about this, you can search for WBBM News Radio on social media. You can Google that as well. You can download the radio.com app and search for WBBM. I'm Brandon Eisen with WBBM News Radio in Chicago, and this is what we know so